Hey, welcome back to the podcast. You've probably heard that the real estate market is, well, bananas, completely on fire. As we sit here today, most of you know that there are actually more real estate professionals working than there are homes for sale. That's a startling number. And we also know that there's nearly 4 million buyers that desperately want to buy a home, and there simply is not enough inventory for them. I would call that pressure. Pressure. Think about that word. So there's pressure for you to get your buyer's offers accepted. There's pressure not only to win the listing, but heck, to get it at the right price, the right terms, and ultimately the right fee. There's pressure to get the deal together and not lose your income in the process. There's pressure to even win an appointment. There's just so much pressure in the market right now. So I've asked the guy who has a very different perspective on pressure to join us on this podcast. You know him, Chris Voss, the world famous FBI hostage negotiator, turned incredible author of this book, which I'm sure you've bought and read and listened to multiple times and maybe checked out his masterclass. Chris has, become an author, a trainer, the CEO of the Black Swan Group. He's done so much to help so many become a better negotiator. So Chris, you ready for some pressure today?
Yeah, let's see what we could do, huh? What's the old phrase? Pressure makes diamonds.
Pressure always makes diamonds. That's right. So we also have Jeff Mays. If you're watching, you see his smiling face. Otherwise, you're going to hear his voice. Jeff's been on a lot of podcasts. So Jeff, they know who you are. Let's just jump right in. So Chris, I was thinking about our last podcast, and the sort of the thought that I wrote down that's going through my head is, in your world, is there been any new distinctions, any new things uncovered about negotiations? It's my favorite question. Like, what have you learned about negotiations since we talked last?
Yeah, I think I don't know how much we talked about proof of life last time, the favorite of the fool. If you don't, the phrase is, if you don't know who the fool in the game is, it's probably you.
Beautiful.
We really had no idea how appropriate that is to negotiations, business opportunities, real estate agents seeking to work for clients. I mean, when you understand really what the buyer's journey is, the client's journey in making a decision, it really changes the game entirely. And for example, if you just fire bad clients before you ever get them, your life is going to be a lot easier.
True. So I heard you, but didn't hear the first part. What did you call it again? Proof of life? And then you kind of said proof of life.
Yeah.
So what does that mean?
What does that mean? All right. So in hostage negotiation, there were two issues if we were speaking to purported kidnappers. Number one, do they have the hostage at all? And number two, do they intend to release them to you? Do they intend to make a deal with you? And in the private sector, are they looking for a deal, and are they looking for a deal with you? Now they might just be looking to kick the tires, not change out of the status quo. A lot of people, they want to list their home on one of these websites, which means they're not looking to go with any agent. But that doesn't mean they're not going to pump you as an agent for a lot of information.
Right.
So are they looking for a deal? Now, the second issue is, let's say they're looking for an agent. In the decision journey, by the time they talk to you, you are either the favorite or the fool. In either case, there's no reason to cut your fee. Like, real estate agents that do their job are a bargain. They are worth their weight in gold. In the business sector, a finder's fee is 10%. You bring somebody a deal, you help them consummate the deal.
Yep.
You made it happen. That's 10%. Real estate agents, what are they getting? 5-6% if they get both sides, depending upon the environment. I mean, at full fee, a real estate agent is a ridiculous bargain. So again, whether or not you're the favorite or the fool when you interact with a client, you got no business cutting your fee as a first move.
Yeah.
And if they pick you, if they pick you or not, it ain't going to be because of your fee. So you are, cutting your fee is just cutting your own throat. They may have already decided to give you the business, so they may test you, to see if you'll cut your fee. Like, even though I want you, you want to charge me less. I'm gonna give you a chance to charge me less.
Yeah.
But if I want you in the first place, it's for other reasons other than the fee, and that's proof of life is what that is.
Yeah. I understood it when you said it, but I wanted to get the business understanding of it. And that was okay. So we're going to, for my friends that are listening or watching right now, we're going to do a bunch of role plays today, kind of continue on with what Chris and I did, what I think is now like maybe a year and a half ago. But I want to go a different direction first. So I asked you kind of what's new, and we're going to circle back into that. I wrote down this question thinking about you this morning, like how much negotiating is done in a family business, and your son works with you. I've worked with my pops. I work with my wife. I've got people that are family that aren't blood family. How much negotiation is done in that scenario? What have you learned for the person that's listening right now that works with their spouse who, has some logical negotiation strategy they're trying to use, and they're like, honey, if you don't do it, like, you're sleeping on the couch. What have you learned to help people in these family businesses negotiate on behalf of, for, and sometimes against the people they love the most?
Yeah, well, anytime you're trying to influence somebody's thinking, you're in a negotiation. Because if you're trying to influence their thinking, you're trying to influence an action. Action is time. Time's a commodity. That's the most common commodity in negotiations is time. Occasionally there's money, but most people think just because if money's not on the line, it's not a negotiation. If you're trying to get somebody to take an action to change their mind to do something different, you're in a negotiation, period.
Yeah.
Now, family, it takes longer to sink in. Like, my son who runs my business, he wants me to get me thinking. We use negotiation skills on each other all the time because our heart's in the right place. The real issue is intent.
Yeah.
But I mean, need to think about it overnight. I certainly know if I'm trying to influence his thinking, I got to give him space to think about it. Probably more space than I might need to give to somebody who's not so close to me.
Yeah.
So it's the same. It takes more patience with family because family relationship is a convoluted relationship that extends anywhere from 20 to 60 years, depending upon how long
Right.
the two of you have been together. So that just means it just takes sometimes a little longer to sink into the neural circuitry.
Right. So I think patience, it's using one of the things I'm going to ask you in a minute is like, what are the 5 to 6 like essentials, like, getting rid of yes and getting to no. But Jeff, before I jump into all that, you got a question for Chris?
I'm sitting there. You wrote down, the time is so important. I think that real estate agents don't view their time as that important. They don't look at it that way. And what can we do to, like, you talked about confidence a little bit. It's more about, I love what you said, the first move is not giving away your commission. And I think that's where agents usually go to. So what can they do to not give away that commission right off the bat?
Yeah, well, you pivot away from commission right away. You start to ask about, what are you trying to get out of this? I mean, how did you and I get into this conversation in the first place? You want to begin to have a deeper understanding of them, to understand what they're really after. Now there may be a commission issue as a last resort,
Right.
but they've already, if you look at any data on people's decision journey, they've collected a lot of information. They've collected a criteria. They've collected a list of favorites and people they really want to go with. And that's influenced by a ton of stuff other than price. Do they know you? Does a trusted advisor know you? You need to really understand how you got into this conversation in the first place before you start making changes. Yeah. And they want to tell you, they just want to know whether or not they're wasting their time telling you.
So is it a little bit more like, tell me more, asking those kind of questions? Where are you coming from? Tell me more.
Yeah. Really, it's mostly keyed around how questions that start with how and what.
Yeah.
I mean, tell me more is a well-intentioned phrase, but you can wordsmith those words to put in a little more deference, because tell me more by definition is a command. Tell me more is a sentence that ends with a period that is a command. And there's great power in deference, and the higher level talent wants the power and influence that deference brings. Whereas commanding tends to be people who are a little more insecure,
Right.
want to command because they're control freaks. They're afraid of being out of control. The power movers understand the secret to gaining the upper hand in a negotiation is giving the other side the illusion of control. And how and what questions give the illusion of control to the other side. So how do we get into this conversation? What are you looking for? Or two questions.
Yeah.
I love it.
Yeah. All right. I'm going to go a different direction. So, Chris, I asked a bunch of our top clients, some of the great team leaders in the US and Canada and Mexico, about some of the struggles they were facing and where they could use some Chris Voss isms if there was such a thing. And the thing that kept being brought up was we feel like we're really good salespeople. We went from this solo entrepreneur to now running a team of 2, 5, 10, 50, 100, 200. And they recognize that every day they are in a negotiation with people on their team, negotiating for the salesperson to do their job, for them to use the software that the company has provided, to do all the tasks that are required to have a successful real estate transaction. And the note that they asked is like, what advice do you have for leaders looking to negotiate more greatness from their teammates?
Yeah, short answer is going to be less direction, more inspiration, and inspiration through getting people to think for themselves based on your guidance as opposed to telling them the answer. Now, a real bad habit for a leader, because they know what should be done, is to tell somebody what to do. Like,
Yeah.
look, let me shorten your learning curve here. I've been down this road before. Do this, and you're trying to get people to succeed sooner.
Yeah.
Problem is, the mental downloading of the knowledge as a result of direction is inefficient. Like if you want to tell somebody to do something and have them get it, a long time ago, I couldn't tell you the source of this data, but for it to sink in, you got to tell them 19 times.
Yeah.
There's a whole bunch of reasons why a long time ago, Ronald Reagan said, if you're explaining, you're losing.
Mm-hmm.
Now, guiding them to that seems highly inefficient because let me tell them once and they'll have it, and I may have to guide them 2 or 3 times.
Right.
But 2 or 3 times is not as many as 19.
Right.
And that's why great management of people, great leadership of people appears to be highly inefficient. But if you guide them once they get it, they got it. They feel like they discovered it themselves, and then it bakes into the brain much more quickly and effectively. And it's the delay that saves time.
Interesting.
Telling is not selling. Yeah, I love it.
Yeah. Well, I like it. It's inspirational. Hey, let's reimagine what it would look like. Tell me what you
saying that will light somebody's brain up a little bit. Now they're thinking. That's what you want.
Yeah.
You want them to think.
Yeah. Love it. For all my team leaders out there, I hope you're paying attention. That was for all of you. So Chris, I was thinking it would be awesome if we could do a few minutes before we could jump into a bunch of role plays and scenarios, which like the last time we did that podcast, people just ate that up. They were just more of this, please. Like we just want to hear how he handles all these different real world real estate scenarios for us.
Yeah.
But I thought maybe for the person that's listening for the first time that maybe is the one person in sales who has not read your book and they need to go buy it today and, cross that off their list. If there was like 5 or 6 or 7 Chris Voss essentials, I think of the FM DJ voice and, getting to the know, getting to that's right. And feeling understood, like all these things that have always resonated for me in your message. But I want to flip it to you and just say, take like as much time as you want. Just give us like, what are the 5 to 6 things every person has to understand now that you've written this book and trained a gazillion people?
Yeah, well, first of all, let the other side talk first. Let them go first. There are a lot of people for a variety of different reasons that feel like if they're not speaking, they're out of control. They're afraid of what the other side's going to say. They're not speaking. They don't feel like they're connecting. The feeling of speaking with someone makes them feel like they're connecting. And if they're not talking, they don't feel like they're connecting. When in fact, the opposite is true. the other side feels like they're connecting when they're talking with you, to you, that you're listening. So let the other side go first. Now, we had a phrase in hostage negotiation, what's it going to take to get the hostage taker to come out? He'll tell you, which means you get the other side talking, there's a pretty good chance they're going to outline the deal for you.
Yeah.
And then whenever they say something you like, you go like, wow, that's brilliant. When in fact, you just waited for them to suggest your idea. So there's so many advantages to hearing the other side out first. It also makes sure that you're on the right track. You got a set of presumptions. I hate the word assumption, and I can't remember what the term that Mark Cuban used when I was talking to him a few weeks ago on Fireside. But it was a different word, which meant he's always testing his understanding. He does an analysis before he gets into a deal. He makes some emotionally emotionally educated guesses. But then he's constantly testing the other side to make sure that his analysis isn't wrong. And how do you test the other side? They got to talk. You got to prompt them into talking and give you the data. So, the short answer is let the other side go first. Let them lay some stuff out. You may find some stuff that you love, there's an emotional advantage for you to agree to versus you proposing.
Cool. Hey, Chris, let me ask you this. How important is it to write down these questions or at least practice? Because I know most people in the audience are like, oh, I can't come up with this question right off the bat. Like they get stuck in a moment. How would you handle that? Or how important is practicing and writing the questions down?
Yeah, no, I love that question, man. It's extremely important. And, to take it one step further, it's better mental exercise to handwrite than it is to type. Your brain is engaged in a completely different way via handwriting. You're more focused, you're more creative. And handwriting, even if you don't,
We're taking plenty of notes right now.
Yeah, you don't even got to keep your notes. Like at one point in time, I ended up with so many notes. I'm like, what am I supposed to do with all this? And then I realized the mere fact that I handwrote it in the first place increased the likelihood that I could replicate the thinking in the moment.
Right.
So, the type of stuff you're talking about, think through a couple of scenarios, write down a couple of responses to get the other side talking. Something we call a label. Sounds like that's important to you. Sounds like you put a lot of thought into that. It sounds like you've been thinking about this for a long time. You handwrite those, then the chances that they'll spontaneously come out of your mouth in a moment are much higher.
Love it.
So if the first one is seek first to understand, right? Let them speak first. What's two?
All right. So then you gotta confirm your understanding. You gotta make them feel understood.
Mm-hmm.
Like you understanding is step one. En route to making somebody feel understood. My son Brandon, he just came up with this off the top of his head a couple of days ago. It's not a sin to get it wrong. It is a sin to not make them feel understood. Which means as you're trying to demonstrate that you're understanding.
Chris, say that one again. Say that one again.
That was cool.
It's not a sin to get it wrong.
Mm-hmm.
It is a sin to not make them feel understood.
Yeah.
So your first understanding is you're going to feed it back with some errors. That's not a sin. And people hate getting stuff wrong, which is one of the biggest reasons that they're afraid to articulate what they think the other person is hearing. Because, if I'm wrong, they're going to think I'm stupid. Or if they openly correct me in front of others, that's humiliating. It'd be embarrassing. The phrase, it's not about you, the cliche. So when you get corrected, you feel humiliated. People would literally, the phrase, I died of embarrassment. That's how bad embarrassment is. We'd rather die.
Yeah.
But if it's not about you, when the other side corrects you, what do they feel? They feel elevated. Right. They have this higher status And they don't realize that it was you that conferred the higher status. That's why there's so much power in deference. When you give someone a higher status via deference, you are the person who conferred that esteem to them. And that's why in so many cases, just shameless flattery. We hate it when we see it being done to somebody else, but we love it when it's being
We
done to
love it
us.
when it happens to us.
Yeah. Yeah.
Because it's
So
this
should you,
great
Chris, should you
conference.
repeat what you just heard from them?
Yeah. Or what you thought you heard.
Yeah.
You
Did I hear you
don't
say
have to
this?
be wrong. Yeah,
Right.
or it sounds like you're saying X.
Yeah.
Okay.
Or you just paraphrase it a little bit. As much as you can to try to synopsize what they just said, and one of two things are going to happen, which are both in your favor. You hit the bullseye and you trigger a release of oxytocin, which is the bonding drug, and which is cool because now you're beginning to build a client relationship that you want. Or they correct you and you trigger the release of serotonin, which is a confidence drug, which feels phenomenal in the moment in a different way. And now you're building a client relationship with them because they don't know it, but they felt so good in the interaction that they wanted to continue.
We could probably stop. We could probably just stop right here, Jeff, but let's keep going.
That's exactly what I was thinking.
But I want to get to, I was digging through a bunch of my archives, and in there I find, Chris, one of my early mentors, Brian Tracy, the 21 closes to get the yes. And it's the standard yes set close that I felt like that was that's how I was raised as a salesperson. Get the yes, get the yes, get the yes, get the yes. Are you wearing a shirt? Yes. Are you wearing a microphone? Yes. We should do business together. Yes. Right. Like that silly pattern. And the first time I heard you talked about, it's not about the yes, it's about the no. I have used that nonstop since. Can you educate the listener that doesn't know what I'm really talking about here? Like give them a little backstory and then share the 4 questions that you want to get the no.
Yeah, well, excuse me. I think there was probably a point in time when the yes momentum, a yesable proposition,
right?
There was probably a point in time when that was a good idea.
Yeah.
And then it became so effective that people were using it for everything. And then unfortunately, then also people that we can't trust learn to use it to negotiate, all kind of bad deals. There are industries out there that are just freaking famous for just exploiting people to the point of financial ruin.
Right.
So then the problem is it's been used so much and so globally that people are yes battered. Like everybody over the age of 19 years old has been bamboozled by the yes momentum, momentum selling.
Yeah.
Because it was so taught so pervasively, and it was at one point in time, I'm willing to concede, there was probably a point in time when it was effective. But now when people are yes battered, they don't know what it is, but they got a gut instinct memory in their bones that they've got bamboozled. What's the phrase? Once you're bitten by a snake, you're afraid of ropes.
Right.
Like you're afraid of everything that even comes close to resembling it. So you as a real estate agent, you as a business person, you as a trusted colleague even, the minute you start trying to get people to say yes, it triggers an overdose from the person that hurt them. Even if they like you, even if they know you, you can't get past the fact that they're yes battered. A grown-up tries to give a hug to a battered child.
Yep.
Because that hugs, they're actually something, people are healthier if they get hugged regularly. You're actually healthier.
Correct.
But you try to hug a battered child, they're going to flinch because the last adult that tried to hug them beat them. So your intention is not good enough here. And it's so bad that we've just found look, you got to get out of yes entirely. And as simple as it is, as ridiculous as it is, all you got to do is change your yes-oriented question to a no-oriented question. Are you against? Is it ridiculous?
Yeah.
Does it seem like a bad idea? Do you disagree?
Would it be unreasonable? Like
Would
obviously.
it be unreasonable?
Right.
And the trigger of the no, because while people have been conditioned that yes is a trap, they've also been conditioned that every time they say no, they protect themselves. Like again, I'll refer to my son, Brandon, who's a genius negotiator. When he was 17 and it was Dad, can I? And I'd say no before he even finished the sentence. But I look back on it and I realized that having said no and I felt protected, I was then more willing to listen. And I would almost invariably turn around with, all right, so what was it that you wanted? Now, having said no, I feel protected. And now I'm more open-minded.
No, let me process it.
Right. But Chris, would it be unreasonable for you to tell the story about how you almost killed Jack Welch?
Why no? Somehow I feel compelled to say no. I don't know what it is. Something mystical and magical just came over me because I said no. Yeah, no, I mean, I'm in LA a number of years ago. I'm still teaching at USC, University of Southern California. And Jack Welch, a book signing in LA. You know, I'm going through the long line of people signing the books. And so what does that mean? By the time you get up to Jack, they're doing everything they can do to keep you from talking to them because they got 300 people to get through the line. You stand there and chat for 5 minutes, everybody's there for 6 hours. So there's a million reasons why they don't want you talking to Jack. Now I'm going to pitch Jack, and I know I've got the opportunity to say one thing, period. I can't even introduce myself. I can't do anything. I got time for one sentence. So, you know, I know the magic of getting a no. So I walk up to him, I look him in the eye, and I go, is it a ridiculous idea for you to come and speak at the negotiation course that I teach at USC? And he first he looks at me and he kind of gets a little bit of a scowl, then he looks up and to the left and he just gets this hideous scowl on his face. He just freezes. You know, and this was several years ago. Jack Welch, God rest his soul, all my experience with him, genuine, decent human being. And he freezes and he looks furious and then he doesn't move. And my first thought is he's so angry he had a stroke and he died and he's going to fall over dead right in front of me because he doesn't move. And then, you know, then I think, all right, so he's not dead, but he's furious and he's going to have him throw me out. But then after what seemed like an eternity, he looks back at me and he says, this is my personal assistant's name. This is a special Twitter account we have set up to communicate with her. I will call her and tell her who you are, what you want. I think we're going to be in Los Angeles in the fall. If we are, we'll come in and speak to your class. So not only did he process a no, but he thought through the next 4 or 5 steps for implementation. And it was done. Boom. It went that quickly.
So I was watching your reading. I forget which one it was. First of all, thank you for telling that story because I probably listened to it 3 times, and every time I listened to it, you could see Jack's face just like right in that moment, and probably his wife next to him like, "You're killing my husband. What the hell is going on here?" It's a great example, though. So many of our clients deal with these situations where they need to ask a better question, right? Something that no one else is asking. Everybody's saying like, hey, would you like to know the new value of your house? Everybody's saying, hey, if I can get you a price, would you be willing to X, right? Like everybody's doing that over and over again. And if you're out there and you're listening, you're doing that and you're getting terrific results, just fast forward on this audio message. Otherwise, listen up. You once said, I want to say there was like 4 different openings, I think it was, to the no question. Is it ridiculous? Would it be unreasonable? Is that the pattern? Or were there 4 specific questions?
Well, you know, I think there's probably about 3 or 4. You know, if I may, I'll put in an ad for our YouTube channel because I know I've got a video up. The top 4 no-oriented questions.
That's what it was.
Where I kind of walk through it and what they are and what's behind them. And the other thing to do also is if you just write down, are you against?
Yeah.
You disagree? Would it be ridiculous? And then, you while you're writing, you're going to think, well, could I say it this way? As long as you're intentionally attempting to trigger a no,
Yes.
you will begin to figure out other great ways of putting it. Now, some of them are context driven. One of the key ones, which is for restarting conversations with people who have stopped talking with you, is, have you given up on working with me?
Love
Have you
that
given
one.
up on
Love it.
X, Y, or Z? Now, we find like not only will the other person respond, but in a ridiculously short period of time. Like that has the highest compliance rate of anything, and quick. Like as a general rule, like when I send that questions, if I'm sending a text, which I know that they're going to see a text right away. Hey, have you given up on the project with the Black Swan Group? I'm going to sit there and wait because they're going to answer within 3 to 5 minutes. Now, context, situation drives strategy. If this is your opening line, then that question is probably out of context.
Good point.
Right.
And that's a great way for that great question to now create dissonance in me and erode trust. So when I get an opening email, and I know how effective this email is, like, have you given up on taking me on as an intern? Or have you given up on looking at my website? When I've never gone with these people and I have never started, I either delete that email,
Right.
or occasionally I'll respond because I suspect that it's somebody I can't trust, and they will let me know in their very next response. They'll confirm to me that I can't trust them, that they're trying to take advantage of me.
Yeah.
And that one is so effective that the people that you can't trust have picked up on it, and they're looking for mechanisms, not because they're trying to work with you. They're looking for the hacks to take you to the cleaners. So if you get that question out of context, wait a minute, I never
Cool.
started with you. How could I
Right.
have given up? It's
Yeah.
a bad sign.
Yeah.
Chris, I'm sitting there thinking, you ever mess with cold callers when they call you? Could you imagine calling Chris as a cold call?
I will tell you, everybody on my team, when we get hit with a bad cold calling script,
Right.
we'll take if we got time on our hands. I realize that some poor schmuck's probably just starting out. It's a tough job.
Right.
They're just doing what the boss told them to do. We'll try to correct them. I'll jump in and we'll be looking to give a short tutorial.
This is your lucky day. You're going to get educated.
We could tell that, you could tell from the tone of voice, whereas some kid starting out, somebody trying to make a house payment, somebody in a bad place, and they were just taking whatever work they could get.
Right.
So I'm like, all right, I'm gonna give this guy a break. They probably won't hear me now, but I'm gonna say something that'll get them to reflect back. So if they're learners, when they move on, then they could get better.
It's so funny you say that. Shout out to Hanan Levine, if you're listening right now, from Orange County, California, who, get this, Chris, he cold calls me at my house. He's working for some silly company. It was not in the real estate business. And he was so smooth, so authentic, so humble that I was like, tell me more. Like what? And then I remember like 5 minutes into the conversation, literally 5 minutes in, a cold call. I'm a busy guy. And I'm like, this guy is so good. I'm like, where do you work? Like, he's like, I told you the company. No. Where do you live? He's like, oh, I'm in like Fullerton. I'm like, listen to me. I don't know what you get paid, but I'm willing to bet I would pay you more. I recruited the guy. He worked for me for 5 years, crushed it with me, then went into real estate and killed it. So I love that. I love that you would actually take the time. I know everybody's busy, but if you actually took the time to help that person, like that makes my heart sing.
Yeah, and the word that you used to describe him, which I'm sure was one of the main reasons why you went on, you said the guy was authentic.
Yeah.
Authentic.
Yeah. Yeah. And he was, European accent, European, like, so he didn't come across, like, I know a lot of Euros that, Germans, Austrians, right? Like super intense. And he is, but he was just like, I'm just, letting you know, I'm calling people in your area and I'm not telling you that everybody is signing up for it. I'm just letting you know if this is something you'd be interested in. It was like, and that wasn't even the script, but it was just so genuine, right? It didn't sound salesy at all, which is why I was so engaged with the guy. But let's go a different direction. I want to make sure. So other side speaks first. Then you gave some really cool insights around like labels. Like sounds like you're saying this, like really having people know that you're listening, that you're really listening. You're validating that, validation of listening. And then obviously, getting to the know, like all of that is great. I want them to hear the that's right. The whole strategy around getting to that's right. And I know as a hostage negotiator that every story I heard you talk about was brilliant. Can you put it into a scenario for business?
Yeah, well, and that's getting back into checking out your understanding of what they heard. And then you really trying to, you ask yourself, all right, so what's the subtle, unexpressed want here?
Mm-hmm.
And if in your summary of where they've come from, if you can find, the hidden unexpressed want and nail it,
Mm-hmm.
that's the oxytocin moment. That's the that's right moment.
Yeah.
It's, you're triggering an epiphany about themselves. And oxytocin is a bonding drug.
Mm-hmm.
And when you trigger that, then the feeling on their side it's the enlightenment. It feels phenomenal, and they bond with you. A couple of years ago, I'm in a conversation. I'm struggling with something. I get senior executives of my team were getting coached by strategic coach Dan Sullivan,
Mm-hmm.
outfit out of Toronto. We're a big believer in these guys. So I'm at one of the gatherings. We're sitting around, in a bar with some of the people in the community that night. And I'm struggling with something. I'm talking through it. And I could tell from the interaction, the listening and, she's going to get a that's right out of me. And I like to step back and say, all right, I'm getting ready to hit this moment. What's this going to feel like? And literally the minute when she triggered this insight to me and I said, that's right. I got a great hit of something,
Right.
I just felt really good in the moment. It was great. I will be appreciative of that moment till the day I die, which is what that's how you build a great client relationship.
Yes.
Right.
Then you put yourself in a position. Now you're the trusted advisor. You trigger that's rights out of people.
Mm-hmm.
That's exactly it. What you just said, trust. You're looking for trust-based influence.
Yeah.
Which once triggered, the durability of that is, it's like a blood oath. It just sticks.
Yeah. So Chris,
do you think deep down?
Yeah. Go ahead. Yeah. Go ahead, Jeff.
Do you think deep down that people want to trust people, or are they hesitantly not trusting?
Well, they're hesitant to trust because they've been stung, or they're used to people that will look out for them only as long as it's in their best interests.
Best interest, right?
So I think by definition, the blank slate that we are when we're born, we're trusting. What's the first year of our life experience taught us? Probably that we could trust everybody that picked us up.
Right.
So, you didn't get dropped 50 times the first year of your life. But then after that, somewhere along the line, and in point of fact, we can, my guess is rough data, you could blindly trust 70% of the people that you interact with.
Mm-hmm.
Now, in Las Vegas, a 70% win rate will make you a lot of money.
That's right.
But as human beings, even though it's a minority that we can't trust, again, once bitten by a snake, you're scared of ropes.
Right.
Once you get betrayed a couple of times, it flips you into the other side where you're afraid to trust.
I was actually going, Jeff, a different direction. I was thinking about the ability to really listen to someone and to hear all the things that matter most to them back to your question on, do you role play? Do you practice? Like, do you take the time to write down the questions? Or are you thoughtful about this? And I think we've all seen this in a live sales interaction, the person that is waiting to say something, but not really listening, versus the person that, do you know what I mean, Chris? Like, they're just like, they can't help themselves. Right. Like I heard a little bit. I'm going to go with that. Close. Versus, so let's just recap. What I hear you guys saying is you want to move, but you understand the market's hot. You also understand that you've been out looking for properties and there's nothing that really caught your eye, but you're clearly, babies are coming, whatever the life situation, like you're recapping all of it. And they're like, yeah, you heard me. Like that, just that, if people would slow down, conversion or client success or whatever you aim for, I think all of it's going to go up. Is that a fair assessment?
Yeah, I love it. And maybe listening for the hidden underlying meaning.
Yeah.
Like
Yeah.
if they're talking to a real estate agent, look, they've been on, and I haven't even kept track of all the websites now where sell your own home, don't use a real estate agent. You can handle it
Right.
without an agent. And when people see those ads, they think this looks a little bit too good to be true.
To be true.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
There's got to be a hidden catch. So when you summarize all the things, Tom, that you just said, then you could throw in, and you probably got a nagging feeling here that there's more to this than meets the eye. You're probably afraid that there are tripwires here that Zillow and Webfin or whoever else is out there are just not telling you. And you got a nagging feeling that you need a professional to keep from going down in flames.
Where do I stop after you say that?
What's going through my mind is, Jeff, I was actually thinking like, it's unfair. Like if you can have the Clint Eastwood squint while you're saying all of this, right? About for my team watching was like, I was like, I know it's Chris Voss. Am I suddenly interviewing Clint Eastwood? Like, right? I know what you're saying here, right? Like,
know what you're feeling. I feel you.
All right, let's go.
And I got to tell you a funny story. I mean, in previous life as an FBI agent, working a terrorism case in New York, and we got a couple of witnesses from Algeria, great guys. And we're trying to look for a safe place to hide them. And the first place we took to fell through at the last minute. So me and my partner, NYPD detective, we're driving. They're sitting in the back seat, and my partner goes like, what are we gonna do? I don't know. We're gonna put these guys someplace safe now. No questions asked. And I looked at him and said, they got a place. Just give me about 12 hours. And our Algerian witnesses in the back, they start going back, talk. And then they go, Clint Eastwood. And then they start laughing. and I'm too thick. And so I looked at my partner, the detective, and I go, what are they laughing at? And they go, they just called you Clint Eastwood.
Yes. Oh. I knew it couldn't have been the first time. All right. Rapid fire. So Jeff, I'm just going to hit him with a bunch of things from our clients. So Chris, people wanted to role play with you. So here it is. Scott Pridemore says, how would you best negotiate with an agent you're trying to get to recruit your team? You're trying to get him to join your team. And they say, Chris, I'd love to join you, but I got deals closing in December and January. So it's not a good time for me to switch companies at this point. Like I'm in, but I need time.
Sounds like you're ambivalent.
I would go, I need a dictionary. What is ambivalent? Let me think about it. Like, you just confused me. I love it.
Yeah. Well, no,
yeah,
Chris, I have, I'm afraid if I move, I could lose 30% of every one of my closings. So I'd be giving up like a third of each of these transactions, my income.
Yeah, that potential of that short-term loss really stings. Also sounds like you're worried about long-term.
If you're only listening to this and you're not seeing the facial expression,
Right.
I can't get Clint out of my head now. Okay, I'm gonna keep going. You ready? Let's see. Buyer fatigue is real, per Renee Funk in Orlando, Florida. What are the best strategies, Chris, to maintain trust and engagement through a longer than normal sales cycle where the buyer is losing, right? Getting frustrated because they're not finding the one, or if they do, they write an offer and they lose to another client. How do I keep that person engaged and keep that trust going?
All right, so take the word trust out, put in predictability.
Love
And
it.
here's something that agents do inadvertently all the time. Your interactions with them are completely unpredictable because you only want to talk to them when you got good news. When do you or they know when you're going to have good news? You don't. So communicate with your clients on a predictable schedule. And then here's the other part that's even harder. Well, what if I don't have any good news for them? Well, the mere fact that you're calling them and say, hey, just call and let you know there's nothing new. That's tremendously reassuring. You become eminently predictable. And since in an uncertain market, you then become the one predictable thing in the market. Now, anxiety, one of the definitions of traumatic stress is overwhelming stress that's unrelenting. What is unrelenting? You don't know when it's going to be over. It's uncertain.
Right. Let's keep going.
And the real estate market is uncertain.
Mm-hmm.
So you become the certainty.
Yeah.
Communication with you becomes a certainty. Then this whole trust factor becomes built consistently because they're sitting there like, I don't know, I don't know when we're going to find a buyer. God, when are we going to find a buyer? But I do know that I'm going to speak to my agent Wednesday at 10 a.m.
Mm-hmm.
So I can calm down knowing that Wednesday at 10 a.m. I'm going to speak to my agent. Even if there's nothing new, I know that if there's nothing new, that's
Right.
actually a piece of information. And
Right.
it makes me feel like my agent is working, even though as an agent, of course they should know we're working. You know, if I don't get back to them, I'm still working. They don't know. They don't know that. They're humans.
Yeah.
So
They
let
want certainty.
communication with.
Yeah. So, all
I'm
right,
sorry, I interrupted you.
I'm going to hit you with another one. So, Chris, you're the listing agent and I'm the seller. We really like what you have to say, and we believe that you love our house just as much as we do. And we really want to give you the listing. We're just not comfortable with your fees. I mean, there's other agents that would do it at 1%, and you're asking for like 2.5% to you.
Would you want somebody who can't stand up for themselves try to stand up for you?
I hear you. And my mother just sold her house. And she said, honey, I used, your Aunt Sally. And we know that she couldn't sell her way out of a paper bag on fire. And we had like 15 offers on the house. I like you. I just think that you're going to do a little marketing and it's going to sell real quick because that's just the market we're in. It just 2.5% just doesn't feel justifiable.
That sounds like you'd be better off going with Aunt Sally. Because, all right, so one of two things is happening here.
Yep.
They're going to go with Aunt Sally anyway. They just want to make sure that you're doing everything that she's going to do. And so they're pumping you for information, free consulting, if you will. Or the other thing, which is definitely unconscious, unspoken thing, like in this interaction, you're auditioning as their ambassador.
Mm-hmm.
And they want their ambassador to not give in and be very polite. They want the agent to be someone that absolutely holds their ground in a really polite and deferential way. And if you can't hold your ground for yourself, you ain't going to hold it for them.
them.
You're going to
They're
throw them
testing
under
you.
the bus.
Yeah.
How much other data do they have about people that have been shoved into deals by agents and they have nothing but a bad feeling over it?
Right.
When they
Love it.
felt like the agent could have done a better job, but the agent gave in the process.
All right.
Hey, Tom, I got one.
Go.
I got one. Go. Our good friend Devin Tryon out in Hawaii, he asked, how, like, the negotiating with other agents is when you get another agent that's not really playing nice, whether they're unfriendly or just not a productive agent. How do we turn them into a foe to a friend? How do we create an adversary and make them this a better relationship? How do we convince them to do better?
Yeah, there's different. This is called boundary setting and a black swan method. I mean, there's a couple different ways to handle that. My first question is if they're not easy to get along with when they act out like that. My question is going to be to them like, what kind of relationship are you trying to establish with me long term? How are we going to work together in another transaction after this?
Right.
How do we work our way through this together so that we don't hate each other when this is all over? The shift, you're shifting the other side's thinking.
Mm-hmm.
Like a lot of people have gotten very adversarial short term because the short term successes are tangible. They can feel them, they can see them.
Yeah.
But they don't have a real instinct for the long term damage.
They're not thinking long term. That's right.
So you want them to shift. You're not asking them to compromise their position. You're not asking them to compromise their principles. But you want to shift their thinking into the bigger picture, which normally you'd want to say, hey, look, Bozo, we're both in the same community. The more you are a jerk, the less I'm going to work with you, and I'm going to tell everybody in the community what kind of a jerk you are. Right. But you can't say that to somebody.
No.
Right.
But you want to trigger that thinking. You want to trigger the fact that, look, if we're in all communities are small communities. So either we're going to work together again, or people that like me are going to work with you, and they're going to like you if they know I don't like you.
Yeah.
But you have to gently shift people's thinking out of short term into long term.
Love it.
So, Chris, back to the opening of this podcast when I said pressure, 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 pressure. One of the big pressures that everyone listening experiences, they're representing this wonderful individual or couple that wants to buy a house, right? And it's exciting. We want to buy a house and we saw this property online and let's go take a look at it. Oh, it's brand new. Yes, let's write an offer, maybe even sight unseen. All that is fun until you're now competing against 5 other offers, 10 other offers, 15 other offers, 50 other offers. Not kidding on that number, right? How would you recommend an agent who's representing the buyer pre-frames their message to the listing agent and ultimately to the seller to just get noticed, to maybe move up to the top of the list?
I think any seller's or buyer's agent that is not sending in a letter describing the buyer's vision for the home is leaving money on the table. Like I am unwilling to leave past any edge by because each edge accumulates. And I know that there are sellers who have sold to buyers because they felt they knew them as people and turned down higher offers. Now, how often does that happen? How often does it have to happen?
Right.
All I know is I'm looking to increase my odds every step of the way instead of being lazy and going like, I don't, let's say that works 1 in 10 times. I ain't doing it at all. Well, that means you left 1 in 10 transactions, 1 in 10 commissions you should have got that you didn't get.
Yes.
And then the flip side is what happens if you don't do that? Your contract is nothing other than a black and white piece of paper. There's no personality to it. You are a number only. You might as well have not even put in your your client's name, you might as well put in a number, because they are not humanized in any way. They are only a number, and it is real easy to discard you if you are only a number.
Yes.
You are asking to be left out if you're only a number. Now, there's probably an almost boilerplate letter that every agent could come up on behalf of every buyer, so it's kind of fill in the blank.
So I want to say though, Chris, really fast, everyone listening, at least in the US, there is a fair housing rule that says you can't write, it's against the rules to write a letter that says, let me tell you about my client, Tom and Kathy. They've got a 2-year-old and a 4-year-old, and they desperately want to be in this school area. Like, agents are not allowed to do this. But the way I heard you, just for the person listening who's like right now flaring up, oh my God, fair housing, you can't do that. The way I heard you describe it was a letter for a vision for the home for the buyers. And I already want to call legal to say, is that okay? Like, can you, without bringing in the personal details of the family? And Jeff, I'm looking to you, and I already know there's like 5 people I want to call right now just to say, but maybe Chris, obviously, this is a very small, narrow little rule that was created about a year and a half ago in real estate. So like, it just is what it is. But talk about the vision for the house. Like, give us an example.
My clients want to have the same memories of joy and laughter that you've had.
Yeah.
There's nothing wrong with that.
Yeah.
You haven't revealed the name, family demographics.
No. Right.
Yeah.
And those are the subtle differences.
Yeah.
They're looking for a place to raise a family and have the same immortal moments in this home that you had. They're not looking for a house, they're looking for a home.
Yeah. Yeah. Even Jeff, just thinking about it, just even that. And then what about if you had a chance to talk to the listing agent who ultimately is going to present 5 offers, 7 offers, 10 offers, but there's something about likability. And I'm speaking like the unwritten rule, like you can't say that, but no, there's a likability of, hey, all these offers the same. I know this agent's a good agent. Well, what advice do you have? And again, not knowing all the rules, and I won't bore you with all those details, but just what advice do you have for someone that's just, I'm calling that listing agent, I'm sending him an email, I'm sending him a text, letting him know I'm presenting an offer, and I'm just trying to create an edge.
Yeah, exactly right. And you're allowed to take every edge you could get, because they will accumulate. And draw a fine point here. There's a difference between being likable and needing to be liked.
Yeah.
If you need to be liked, you've been taken hostage by the other side. You got complete control over whether or not you're likable. Do you communicate at reasonable hours? Are you deferential? Do you realize that emails have tone, and the fact that if you don't put something in to soften the tone or to warm it up in any way, shape, or form, it's going to come across as cold.
Right.
Like, I'm a direct and honest person. I tend to write abbreviated emails if I don't watch myself. Succinct answers.
I don't see you doing a bunch of emojis.
Nah. They come across as cold.
You're not an
shouting.
emoji guy.
Yeah.
Right.
So I'm just cautious that, say things, communicate in a kind way, in a gentle way.
Mm-hmm.
And then you begin to add the edges that you need. Because, what you really need is, if possible, find out from the listing agent, what really matters.
Bingo.
And it may just be the highest price, but at least knowing that, you're smarter when you go from wondering to knowing. Every time you go from wondering to knowing, it increases your ability to get a deal done.
Bingo. That's a typical question, Chris, that we would ask our clients to say is, if you get a hold of the selling agent, to just find out what's most important to the seller. And we might say beyond price, or is it just price? And then if it's price, then you can write escalation clauses that says, highest bid plus X, right? And, some states don't allow it. Most states do. Like, that's another way of doing it. But I think at the end of the day, it is that, like, that edge, that extra edge. So I got 2 more, and
the market's cooling. I mean, like neighborhood I'm I live in the Las Vegas area.
Yeah.
For the first time in a year, I'm seeing open house signs pop up in the neighborhood.
Yeah.
Right.
Like
Hadn't had them before.
even 4 months ago, nobody put up an open house sign because they didn't have to hold an open house, because as soon as they listed the house, there were 15 people standing outside. Now, open house signs that are starting to pop up is an indicator to me that things are starting to slow down. Otherwise, people wouldn't be doing it.
I'm going to send you my podcast called This Week in Housing. We have the data that actually says the opposite, but your timing is perfect because the two last questions were basically the same thing. You ready? Tom Toole says from Philly, I know, Chris, you've never heard this before, but the buyer told their agent, we just want to wait. We need to think it over. But I want to combine it with Nazar, who also said, we've decided to wait for home prices to drop. So really it's the wait. So how would you help that person work through the client that's saying, we want to wait for prices to drop, or we just want to wait, we need to think it over?
Well, first of all, I really need to understand where the reluctance is. And I got to tease it out to them. It could be a variety of reasons.
Mm-hmm.
They might not trust you. Their own personal conditions might have changed.
Mm-hmm.
It could be 4, 5, 6 reasons for waiting. We got to hone in on what those are. And the quickest way to get an answer out of them is, sounds like you've got a good reason for waiting. Now, they want to share why they're waiting as long as they don't feel like they're going to get argued with.
Yep.
People want to tell you where they're coming from. They just don't want to be argued with. They don't want to be told why it's wrong. So if you say, sounds like you have a good reason, is already an indicator that you're not going to slap them down. Plus, if they got a reason for waiting, they think it's a good reason.
Right.
So you're most likely, and again, this is all about best chance of success, not guarantees of success, but what are your best chances of success? I got to know what's going on here, because I got to know, how do I invest my time with this client as we move forward? Am I wasting my time? Or is there do they trust me? They just really want to wait. They're scared. Sounds like you're afraid that you're going to leave a lot of money on the table. Sounds like you don't have a place to go. Sounds like it's really easy for you to stay where you are. What kind of pressures are they under? You got to tease it out, find out for sure what it is before you can navigate it.
Right. So give me again the phrase you used to kind of pull it out. Sounds like
you got a good reason for waiting.
Yeah.
Then they're going to tell you the reason. Then you can talk it through.
They're most likely. You need you need a genuine, real reason. Now, they could make something up. Anybody can lie in the spur of the moment, or they can duck. It's just it's just a feeling I have.
Yeah.
You really want to know what the reason is, and so sounds like you got a good reason. Is the best chance of success for getting at the core issue the fastest.
It's so interesting, Chris, when I think about, the last podcast, this podcast, all of your content, I always go back to the same thing. We always and forever are in a skills market. Whoever has the skills, right? Whoever knows the questions to ask, whoever has tactical empathy, which we didn't get to talk about, and so many of the other things that we all believe in. So is the listeners sitting here and they're going to listen to this 2 or 3 times. If there was just a message or two that you want to share with the real estate industry to just encourage, remind, cajole, to get them just to get better, what would you say?
Yeah, start weaving this stuff into your daily conversations, either small stakes or no stakes. Because as you said, skills, and these are perishable skills, but also the more you practice, then the better you get. So, and you're not going to trot any of these black swan skills out like in the midst of a deal where there's really high commission at stake for the first time.
Mm-hmm.
But if you've been practicing with the Lyft driver, with the person at the checkout counter, person in Starbucks. There's all sorts of people you can get small stakes practice in on a regular basis, that suddenly you're so comfortable that you will trot it out in the Super Bowl, in a championship, when there's so much at stake, because you've been practicing small stakes. So get your small stakes practice in and have fun doing it. Be delighted by it and be willing to be wrong. Director of Business Development in our company, Davey Johnson, learned Spanish 10 times faster than anybody else did, because the person that told her said, you're going to have to make about 10,000 mistakes to get conversational. It's probably going to take you about 18 months. And she was like, oh, like every time I make a mistake, I'm putting points on the board. I'll make them sooner. She was fluent in 10 weeks.
Wow.
That is impressive. But that is, again, there's almost an enormous can of worms we just opened up there, which people don't want to fail. They don't want to make mistakes. They don't even want to make the little mistakes. It dents how they feel about themselves, Chris. You're asking me to fail a lot.
Yeah, exactly. But then what's the failure represent? A learning accelerator or a defeat?
Yeah.
How are you reinterpreting that in your brain?
Yeah. And there's the reframe. Okay, so last question. Looking behind you, there's a lot of books. One that I think I might have single-handedly bought 5,000 copies and just given them out to everybody, including my commercial broker who was in before we did this podcast. What are your 5 favorite books behind you?
All right, so
the pressure's on because we both know a lot of authors.
All right, yeah. Well, I mean, one of our guys wrote a book, The Ego, Authority, Failure, about leadership, and it's applying tactical empathy to leadership. Ooh. And we've had a number of our clients say, Derek's take on tactical empathy, which is different from yours, really finally closed the loop on my understanding. Mm-hmm. So it's coming at the same thing from a different direction. And ideally, anybody in real estate, you're going to be leading a team at some point in time. That's how you get ahead. You want to go fast, go alone. You want to go far, go as a team.
That's right.
So Derek's book, An Ego, Authority, Failure, is good. I like The Talent Code by Daniel Coyle.
Yeah.
Which is really about all the learning mechanisms. And Coyle says there's no such thing as somebody naturally gifted. They just got interested before anybody else noticed, and they got in their hours before anybody else saw that they were. It's a good book on learning.
Great.
Stephen Kotler's book, The Rise of Superman, is also great about human performance.
Yeah.
And I love Stephen's book. And a podcast, if I may, that I listen to all the time, Andrew Huberman Labs, the Huberman Lab podcast. He's got the most up-to-date science on all aspects of human performance.
Nice.
And I'm listening to his stuff constantly. And sometimes you got to read, sometimes you need to listen. I mean, you're feeding your brain a bunch of different ways. And I'm a huge fan of his, huge fan of Andrew Huberman.
Outstanding. Thank you for that. Well, Chris, I hope that we get to see each other at a live event sometime in 2022. I know my team's talking to your team. Anything new and exciting coming out next year? You have another book on the way?
Yeah, we got several things in the works. We got new blocks of instruction that are coming out that are enhancing what we're doing. And so, I mean, the best way to keep up is subscribe to the newsletter, which I think I told you about before. But if I may, if you're not against,
go right ahead.
Would
it be unreasonable for you to ask?
Yeah. Would it be ridiculous? Yeah. All right. So if we got a great text to sign up method, simplest.
Yep.
If you're in the U.S., and I'm guessing that the vast majority of your listeners are.
And then a lot aren't. So do both.
Well, I'll give you 2 ways. The text to sign up function. The number you text to is 33777. That's 33777. Black Swan method. 3 words, not cap sensitive, spaces between the words. You get a text response back asking for your email, which takes you to the website when you subscribe to the newsletter, which is blackswanltd.com. And plus, either way, the newsletter and the website, we got a ton of stuff that's free.
Right.
And as Huberman's phrase is, at no cost to the consumer, at no cost to you, which doesn't do you any good unless it's actionable and usable. And we make it a point to make all our stuff concise, actionable, and usable. So a lot of stuff. Then once you get signed up for the newsletter, it also, there are training announcements, new product announcements. Not a lot. There's one article to read it or not. One announcement, look at it or not. Get on, use it, or get on with your day.
Yeah. I love it. I love it. Short and sweet, man. Just like your emails. Well, listen.
That's right.
That's right. That's right. All right. Well, listen, Jeff, thank you for joining in. I know you popped out a couple questions. Super
Thank
fun.
you, Chris.
Yeah. Chris, as always, man, just a pleasure and a treat, and enjoy your time. And I will see you in 2022, hopefully live on stage together. All right,
I
everybody.
look forward to it, Tom. Thank you.
Thank you, man. Thanks so much for listening, everybody. Take care. Let's get to work.